Kid Anderson, welcome to bluesharmonica.com.
Thank you, Dave.
Kid Anderson is first and foremost known as a great blues guitarist, and our perspective is you've played with a veritable who's who of the blues harmonica world and recorded a lot with them.
This is true.
And recorded a lot of them as well. We'll be working with Kid at Greaseland Studios, correct? Yeah?
Coming right up.
Yeah. And you're in, is it Campbell or San Jose? I forget exactly the city.
It's, actually, my mail says San Jose.
San Jose.
But it's closer to Campbell or Los Gatos for that matter.
Okay. Yeah, so the greater Bay Area. And Kid is going to be our engineer, and we'll be using his studio for the upcoming project with Gary Smith and Aki Kumar. And the reason why I bring you in today is to talk about the process from a studio engineer's perspective of recording a great sound for blues harmonica players. Before we jump into that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your history as a guitarist and tell us a little bit about the names of some of the blues harmonica players that you've played with and recorded with.
Well, let's see. I'm originally from Norway. I've moved here, but 13 years ago in 2001 to I got a gig playing with Terry Hank, who's a saxophone player. And after a couple of years of that, I started playing with Charlie Musselwhite, and it's just you know, always kind of been my my lot in life to play with harmonica players since then, which I enjoy because I like harmonica. I love harmonica, even though I may occasionally make fun of harmonica players. Yeah, I played with him for about 4 or 5 years, and then the last 6 years I've been with Rick Estrin and the Nightcats. After I took over for Little Charlie, and you know, between those two guys, we've had just about every harmonica player I can think of that is still alive or was at one point in the last 10 years come and sit in with us, and you know, after I started doing engineering and recording and stuff like that, I got to work with a whole lot of them in that context too.
Mm-hmm. Now, sessions that I'm familiar with, Kim Wilson, Dennis Grunling, what are some other harp players who've recorded at your studio?
Well, Mark Hummel.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hummel has recorded a lot of my studio. Who else? I've you know, I've recorded Billy Boy Arnold, James Harmon. Think of who else there. Mm-hmm. Oh, Paul Osher.
Oh, right.
Actually, me and Paul Osher and Willie Big Eye Smith did a record together. That was one of the last things Willie did before he passed away, and I played bass on that. Mm-hmm. And recorded it. So there's probably a few more that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, that's a good list, and of course Rick
Steve,
Estrin.
Yeah, Rick Estrin, of course. Yeah. Steve Geiger. I can't think of anybody else. Well, R.J. Michaud, of course. Yeah, R.J. I've recorded lots with R.J. I started playing with him, you know, on and off pretty soon after I got here.
Ah. And what got you into actual recording instead of just focusing on the performance? Obviously, you're still a very active performer, but what got you more into the idea of doing the studio thing?
Well, it was probably this, you know, this because of the same experience that a lot of especially blues musicians, you know, have when they go in the studio, in the modern recording studio. You know, we did some records with various people, and a lot of time, you know, you get sound engineers. What they really like is you know, Steely Dan, which, you know, I don't mind, but and you know, they want stuff to sound like a smooth jazz record, and it was just a struggle for me to fight with them to get them to get the sounds that I liked, which is, you know, I'm old school. I like you know, the old chess records that, you know, they sound, you know, to me they sound like reggae dub or psychedelic records. They're pretty, you know, they're very you know, spooky and evocative, and we got just got a big cloud of mysterious sound, you know, that I wanted, and no other engineer I knew at the time were, you know, into that, and they were, you know, and they also seemed very very what's the word I'm looking for? They were not open to trying to get towards that. Obstinate. They were very obstinate in trying to achieve some of those sounds that I wanted to hear. So
They were set in the way that they
Yeah,
record and thought that their process was the process.
yeah, exactly, because that's, you know, recording has changed a lot in the last 50 years, and you know, I think back when they made the records that I really liked, there was a much more of a anything goes kind of attitude. You know, in the 70s and stuff, everything changed to where they didn't want, you know, everything is isolated, everything is separated, and everything is pristine, so to say. I just, that's not the sound I wanted for the blues that I liked. So I worked with a, you know, bunch of engineers, and you know, after a while I started getting good results with some. I mixed and produced a couple of records for R.J. Michaud and for Terry Hank, and I started learning how to, you know, what the sounds I wanted in the studio, how to get them. But I was still at a point where I learned what to tell the engineer, how to get him to do it, and eventually I realized, well, you know, I'm paying by the hour to sit and wait for this guy to, you know, to do what I'm trying to tell him to do. The slower he is, the more money he makes. So I just go, you know, to hell with it. I'm just going to learn how to do it myself. And, you know, that was kind of the last step. And then I knew a guy who worked at a radio station. He was somewhat of a janitor at a radio station, and he was in charge of disposing of, taking to the dump, 8-track half-inch tape machine, which is now worth about $2,500, and a board, a Ramza board. So I got that from him, and his stuff still worked. So I started doing recording on that. And at the time I was sharing a house with Bob Welsh, you know, great guitar player and piano player, and a drummer named Hans Basse. So we kind of started up together doing some recording. And one of the first things we did was a R.J. Michaud record called King of a Mighty Good Time.
With the big crown on the cover.
Yeah. And shortly after that, Dennis Grunling came in with this humongous project with harmonica players that had Kim Wilson on it, and it had Rick Estrian on it, and Mark Hummel, and Dennis, and Rusty Zinn and Bob on guitar. So I engineered that too, and I was at a point in time where that gear from the radio station was really starting to fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a complete near disaster thing. But you know, we made it work. So I went to digital not long after that, and then the struggle was how to get that analog sound on Pro Tools, you know, which I now feel as I've attained.